One of the things I've been thinking about lately is on the subject of narcissism and whatnot, and being in touch with reality or not. If you grew up from the time period of being a little kid,
being abused,
we're all born into this world with no choice in the matter. It's not our choice to be conceived and then be born. And so after we're born, parents are people too, and they have a hard time making ends meet, typically, and or figuring out how to raise a new human, especially as young people who are just navigating adulthood for the first time in their lives. I mean, granted, that's where grandparents come in, because they've got more experience at doing it. If you're born into this world with the advantage of having parents and grandparents to help raise you, then you're way ahead of the game. And if you're born into an adverse situation, such as communism, Nazi Germany, or, Venezuela in its current climate, or the USA in its current climate, or anything, that's probably why children are so bent on
pretending
and living in a world of
pretend,
learning how to pretend. And we teach that in the name of
expanding one's imagination
and all of that. But, let's face it, really, if you're born into an adverse situation and circumstance, you're going to need to pretend to be able to get through each day without killing yourself, for crying out loud. So, it's a defense mechanism. And if it works, it works. So who are we who are not living in the skin and mind of someone else to criticize how they're getting through each day? As the song goes, whatever gets you through the night and day is all right. And here's another something to think about. Instead of bitching about what I don't have, whether I'm with a narcissist or whether I am a narcissist or not, I am way better off being thankful and grateful for what I do have, whatever that is. What I'm learning right now is is Vietnamese and younger than me. She came from a communist country. Saigon fell in 1975. The communists came in and slashed and burned all the rice fields, so there was nothing to eat. So needless to say, a big part of her love language is food, Vietnamese food specifically. Largely, they're here to escape the communists, and what they want to do is preserve their culture. They lost Saigon. Saigon was renamed Ho Chi Minh City. And you see South Vietnamese flags everywhere. The Saigon yellow background flag with the 3 red stripes. I had a t-shirt made of that flag in the interest of selling them. And of course, Hung told me, you can't sell that in South Vietnam. It's illegal. And my response was, well, it's not my intent to sell them there. I want to sell them here. But meanwhile, I enjoy my shirt and she enjoys me wearing it. And every time I wear it, everybody at the Vietnamese coffee shops looks at me like, somebody sure dresses you funny. Anyway, my point is they're just trying to live as themselves, as their Vietnamese selves. I mean, they come here to America and they're kind of forced to abandon all that they were. What Hung has to say is, she likes it better here than there. She says, oh, yeah, it's infinitely better here than there. She doesn't want to go back there to live, even though she says and understands that you've got to work your butt off in America to, have abundance. And everybody back home thinks that as soon as she stepped off the plane, Americans just handed her bags of money. So they all expect her to pay their way back home. And she also says that Vietnamese that come to America are kind of the sacrificial lamb for the family for the purpose of working their butts off and sending money home. Let me tell you, Vietnamese that I know all work their butts off, and I'm talking like 10 to 12 hours a day, 6 to 7 days a week, for the purpose of, buying their parents their house back home. She has 4 siblings that are there. Her father's passed away in 2018. Her mother's still alive, and so she's very connected. She has lots of cousins that are here in the United States of America. So she feels kind of half at home here and half at home there. But I've finally come to understand her psyche after being with her for 15 years, why it is that she is how she is, why it is she wants to preserve her culture. Of course she wants to preserve her culture. On the one hand, I could interpret her as a female covert narcissist and or control freak. And I would offer that any child that grew up in their parents' house where it was their house and their rules is going to want to have control over their lives after they leave. And they're going to want to leave as soon as they possibly can so they can have some control over their lives. Hello. On the other hand, I could look at her from a human perspective and have some humanity, have some compassion, and understand where she's coming from and why she's coming from there, and help her live her life as best as I can. And when I do that, when I embrace her culture, when I let her feed me Vietnamese food, we're celebrating Chip Mung Nam Mai, Lunar New Year was yesterday, and it's a 2-week affair in Asian countries. They close down the country. It's Spring Festival. They paint everything. They refresh everything. They celebrate by getting fresh flowers and all that kind of thing. And, putting up decorations on a winter tree with no leaves on it. And they beautify that tree with these bright red, signifying luck, ornaments with lucky money in a lucky money envelope. And everybody celebrates their birthday during Lunar New Year. Anyway, I'm saying all this to say, I've come to the conclusion that I can either interpret her as a controlling narcissist or understand why it is she's the way she is. We're all born into this world tasked with the task of doing the best we can with the cards we're dealt. And I will say, I think both of us also have many Sigma tendencies, Sigma male or Sigma female empath. We both have very empathetic tendencies and predispositions. Hung is Vietnamese Catholic, so she's continually trying to give to the poor. Of her abundance, there are plenty of homeless here in San Diego that are cold during the winter. There's this one couple that she kind of took under her wing not too long ago, bought, big heavy coat to stay warm, a waterproof parka basically, or a, down-filled puffy winter coat. She bought that. And, she would see him on her way to work at a stoplight in the median begging for spare change or whatever. So she bought him a coat. That's extremely empathic or empathetic or however you want to put it. So she has aspects of her personality that are empathic and narcissistic, as do I. That being said, she's also a little bit of a supernova super empath, as am I, which means she can smell BS a mile away and will not take one iota of it. She gives you about 1 or 2 chances, and as soon as she knows you're taking advantage of her, she's going to shut your ass right down right now. Do not try. I'm here to tell you, too, her doctor daddy didn't raise no dummy, hard as her mama may have tried. I think I've got 2 narcissistic parents that, were basically fighting for control my entire life. My mother was an only child. She was raised, basically taught that her purpose for being conceived was to take care of her mother after her father's passing. And he died at 62 years old, having had her in their early 30s, I think. They waited. He was a dentist. She was a nurse. Her dad bought her a Steinway baby grand piano at 3 years old. So she started taking piano lessons at 3 and then majored in piano and voice. Started college at 16 and graduated when she was 20. Anyway, my point is, she was basically told what her life's passion and mission was going to be. So she decided that she would develop a sense of duty and expected me to do the same, which I did not do. So we were at odds, really, on that score, really kind of my whole life. Our life goals post-World War II and during the Vietnam War, actually, were very different than theirs. And that was a point of contention. And while I'm at it, let me tell you, it's not lost on me that this girl is trying as hard as she can to be a good American for me and take care of me in a way that I understand and prefer, according to her, as much as she can get it. She's been here 20 years and she's doing pretty well. while endeavoring to preserve her Vietnamese culture with her Vietnamese countrymen and women, of which there are many that live here since the fall of Saigon in 1975. It makes me think of the arranged marriages between kings and queens in Europe and Asia and Africa and throughout the world 1,000 years ago and forward and backward, and how especially the daughters that would be married off to some king in a different land, in a different part of the world, in a different country, they would then have to go live with their husband and learn his culture, leaving their culture behind, leaving everything they've grown up with and have come to know how to be, leaving all that behind and having to adapt to and learn their new husband's culture. I mean, man, that cannot have been easy. So Hung is going through that even now. I mean, I see her trying as hard as she can to be what I need. Some might say that's a woman's job to do that. And men, the kings, the lords of the castle, aren't responsible to have to change it all. And I say in 2025, that would be the patriarchy that we're trying to lose. And I concur. I say we need to be meeting them halfway. I mean, seriously, we all have X and Y chromosomes within us. We're all part of each other is the bottom line. So yeah, it behooves us as men to learn how to make it easier on our women, to learn to understand them and meet them halfway. I mean, yeah, I suppose they're the ones with the womb. They are the bearers of the children, but it really does take two to tango. And the most balanced and best children grow up with two parents that care about them and love them and nurture them and make sure they have what they need to grow up into contributing human beings to leave this world a better place, to make this world a better place. So, yeah, we need to get with the program. I will add that I've heard it said, people are to be loved and things are to be used, not the reverse.